So my project was on an evaluation of racehorse performance using the speed gene test and the dosage system. Predicting breeding outcomes using genetic principles has been done for centuries, as the assumption that racing success is inherited has led to intensive selecting breeding for performance-related traits in the thoroughbred. Over the last century, scientists and bloodstock analysts have developed methodologies to predict racing performance in the thoroughbred. These methodologies range from genomic evaluations, such as the speed gene test, to pedigree analysis tools, such as nicking systems, the inbreeding coefficient, and the method analysing this study, the dosage system. Although differing substantially, the aim of these methods is the same: to determine where a horse lies on the speed to stamina spectrum, and from that determine to which race distance it is most suited. There's a preference in the horse industry for short distance, early maturing horses due to the perceived higher rate of return. And a study found that 66% of British breeders operate at a loss, as many small to medium-sized breeders and commercial breeding operations struggle to remain profitable due to wastage, a problem where racehorses exit their racing careers prematurely, often due to poor performance. Ultimately, the more knowledge available to the breeder, the better chance one has at producing the desired type. The speed gene test analyzes the myostatin gene to determine best race distance in the horse. It can easily be examined through a blood or hair sample, and analysis of myostatin for bases C and T can foresee best race distance and precociousness in the horse. The result will show whether a horse is homozygous, meaning it is carrying 2 copies of the one gene, or is heterozygous, meaning it is carrying both the C and T allele. Horses that are homozygous for the C marker, or a CC type horse, are faster, earlier maturing types and are better suited to short distances of less than a mile. An example of this type of horse is Batash, who was the winner of multiple Group 1 stakes races at 5 furlongs. If a horse is heterozygous for the C marker, or a CT type horse, this indicates equal favourability for speed and stamina, resulting in a versatile horse, which is on average best suited to middle distances. An example of this type of horse is multiple Derby winner Galileo. Horses with the TT genotype are genetically best suited to long distances, as the T marker is responsible for a leaner, later maturing body, which brings about endurance traits. An example of this kind of horse is Gold Cup winner Stradivarius. The dosage system is a pedigree classification method used to measure the ratio of speed to stamina a horse inherits from prepotent sires in its pedigree. These prepotent sires are known as chefs de race and were said to contribute traits to their offspring, or a kind of dosage, which influence the suitability of their progeny to certain distances. Dosage is measured through the dosage profile, a set of 5 numbers summarizing the influences of chefs de race in the first 4 generations of a horse's pedigree. The dosage scale ranges from brilliant chefs de race on the left, known for their speed and precociousness, to professional chefs with a high degree of stamina. Chefs in the intermediate, classic, and solid categories range between the 2 extremes. Points are awarded on each chefs de race appearance in a 4-generation pedigree, where 16 is given for a first-generation sire, 8 per second generation, 4 per third, and 2 per 4th generation sire. At the bottom, we have 2 of the newest additions to the chef de race roster. On the left is Unbridled Song, who was awarded the title of chef de race in the intermediate category, as over 80% of his progeny excel at 7 or 8 furlongs. His own dosage profile shows that most of his points are carried in the brilliant and intermediate categories, indicating the strong influence of speed in his pedigree. On the right is Galileo, a sire with chef status in the solid and classic category due to his versatility in passing on both speed and stamina to his offspring. Galileo's own dosage profile shows the heavy influence of Derby winners in his pedigree, as the majority of his points lie in the classic category. 2 measures of the dosage profile are the dosage index and center distribution. The dosage index is the ratio of speed to stamina in a horse's pedigree and is calculated using the dosage profile. The number of brilliant, intermediate, classic, solid, and professional points are entered into the formula shown, and the result is always greater than 0. The center distribution also measures the amount of speed and stamina inherited and is given by the output of this formula, which ranges from -2 to +2. The closer the central distribution is to +2, the more speed the horse has inherited, and likewise, the closer it is to -2, the more stamina a horse has in its pedigree. Showing the two horses again, Galileo's central distribution is close to 0, indicating that he has similar aptitudes for speed and stamina. Likewise, his dosage index shows that he is just 1.11 times the amount of speed as stamina, indicating a balanced profile. Unbridled Song's dosage index indicates he carries 3.5 times more speed than stamina, and his central distribution is just half a point higher than Galileo's. The dosage index and central distribution differ in that the latter does not include classic points in its calculation. The central distribution instead gives more weight to the brilliant and professional points at either end of the scale. The objectives of this study were to determine the relationship between a racehorse's performance, genotype, and dosage measurements, and to examine the efficacy of the dosage system as a predictor of performance and precociousness in the racehorse. Race records of 1,467 horses were sourced from the Racing Post, and the dosage profiles of all horses were sourced from Pedigree Query, where a horse's dosage values are calculated freely online. The study consisted of 818 horses with a known speed gene, out of which just 354 were winners. These horses were divided by distance and standard of the best race, which allowed forming a control group of 649 horses of a similar standard. The speed gene test was analysed through genotype, while the dosage system was analysed through the dosage index, central distribution, and dosage points. The relationship of genotype and dosage values with best race distance, age at first race, first win, and best race and success were analysed. Genotype was analysed by rate of wins and earnings per start, and the dosage values were compared with the number of wins over a horse's lifetime. In defining what constituted a horse's best race, if a horse had a group win, that was its best race. Similarly, if it had not won but placed in a group race, that became its best race. The next best race a horse could hold was a listed win, then a listed placing, and so on down the table. If a horse had 2 group wins, or the race with a greater monetary prize was deemed its best race. When forming the control group, the number of horses that raced best at each distance and at each race class 1 to 7 were made proportional to the genotype group. Statistical analysis was performed using Microsoft Excel and IBM SPSS software. All data were tested for normality, and relationships between variables were measured using one-way ANOVA, the Friedman test, the Kruskal-Wallis test, and Mann-Whitney-U test. In the genotype sample, horses with the genotype CT made up 53% of the population. Just 17% of horses carried the TT genotype, and while the remaining 30% were genotype CC. When the best race distance of the genotyped horses was compared to their predicted optimum distance, 44% of those with the CC genotype raced best at less than 8 furlong. Almost half of those with a CT genotype raced best at age 12, and only 26% of those genotype TT raced best at a distance of greater than 12 furlong. The number of horses in the control group was made proportional to the number of winning horses in the genotype groups. The horses analysed in each category of best race distance therefore were: for less than 8 furlong, 32% were genotyped and 68% were part of the control. For age 12 furlong, 41% genotyped and 59% made up the control. And for the greater than 12 furlong category, 22% were genotyped and 78% were in control. The age that horses raced their best race was significantly younger in the genotype group than in the control. The age of best race was 1 year younger for the genotype group at less than 8 and age 12 furlongs, and 2 years younger in the TT group. Racehorses with a known genotype showed a significantly shorter time interval between their first and best race than horses in the control. Horses with the CC and CT genotype that raced best at less than 8 and age 12 furlong did so within 6 months of their first race, compared to the respective 12 and 18 months taken by the control. Horses with a known genotype, TT, ran best at greater than 12 furlong, on average a year sooner than the control group. When earnings per start for racehorses with a known genotype were analysed, the control group earned significantly less per start compared with the CC and CT horses that raced best at less than 8 and all genotypes at age 12 furlong. The dosage index of racehorses with the CC genotype that raced best at less than 8 furlong was significantly higher than horses that raced best at age 12 furlong. Horses genotype CC that showed a significant decrease in mean center distribution as the distance got longer. Horses with the CT genotype that raced best at less than 8 furlong had a significantly higher dosage index than horses that raced best at age 12 and greater than 12 furlongs. The center distribution decreased as race distance increased, with the most notable difference shown in the horses that raced best at less than 8 and greater than 12 furlongs. These trends in dosage index and center distribution indicate that as a horse's best race distance decreases, there's a greater influence of speed in their pedigree. It could be suggested that the dosage system provides additional guidance to distance suitability. As the horse's age at first race increased, its dosage index significantly decreased. Similarly, the center distribution of horses that first raced at 2 years old was significantly higher than those that first raced at 2.5, 3, and 4 years old. For the age at first win, the dosage index of horses that first won at 2 was significantly higher than horses that first won at 2.5 and 4, and the center distribution also decreased significantly with increasing age at first win. Classic dosage points indicate the balance between speed and stamina in the horse's pedigree. At less than 8 furlong, there were significantly higher classic points for horses with no wins than horses with greater than 5 wins. This can be reflected in the dosage profile of Unbridled Song, a known sprinter who had 11 classic points compared to the 22 that were in Galileo's profile. A similar result was shown for horses that raced best at age 12 furlong, where classic points decreased as the number of wins in a horse's career increased. There was no significant difference in any dosage value for horses that raced best at greater than 12 furlongs with 0, 1 to 4, or 5 wins or more. Racehorses that raced best at less than 8 furlongs and age 12 furlongs with 5 wins or more had a significantly higher dosage index than horses with 0 wins. These trends suggest that there is an increased demand for speed in the pedigree of horses racing at short to middle distances. There was a close to significant difference in the dosage index for horses with greater than 5 wins in the greater than 12 furlong category. To conclude, the dosage index and center distribution significantly decreased as age at first race and age at first win increased. The dosage index significantly increased as the number of wins increased. Horses with greater than or equal to 5 wins had significantly fewer classic dosage points than horses with no wins, suggesting that increasing numbers of classic points in the dosage profile of a horse may decrease his suitability for shorter distances. A known genotype contributed to a younger age at best race and a reduced time interval between first and best race. The average cost of training described by the Racehorse Owners Association of £1,000 to £2,000 a month suggests that thousands of pounds may be saved in determining optimum racing distance. The best race distance of horses with C2C and CT genotypes are further refined by the dosage values. However, the limited significance of the dosage system at distances of greater than 12 furlong indicate that more accurate predictions of best race distance can be made when both the speed gene test and dosage system are utilised. I'd like to thank Plus Vital for facilitating me with the genotypic data, and to Dr. Bridget Young, Amy Fitzgerald, and the rest of the faculty members for their help with this project.
Thanks, Rebecca. Do you want to? Perfect, brilliant. It's a really interesting presentation, and having read your dissertation, which there's a lot of information in there, to try and condense it down to your 15 minutes that you've had, which you've brought in just under 15 minutes. That's brilliant. Was quite an achievement because I wasn't sure how you were going to do it. So yeah. That's really, really well done. I think that I've got a couple of questions for you, and I think that the first thing is you talked about the sample and the control group at the beginning, but can you explain a little bit more about how the data came in through Plus Vital and that sort of process of getting the data set together before you then started analysing it?
Yeah, so I I requested a set of like genotyped horses from Plus Vital. I told them I was doing a research project on it and wanted to look into it, and they happily provided me with the 818 horses that were genotyped. And then from that, I used that then to basically form my control sample that were of, so yeah, that data set contained some of the race records of those horses, but not the entire race record. So once I had that race record, I then used the values that were in that like in that best race distance table that I showed to form a control sample that were of a similar standard.
So did you specify anything when you went to Plus Vital about those particular animals or racehorses, or was it just what they came back to you with?
Yeah, no, I didn't specify at all. I've been told that it was a random sample, but that's about as far as I know.
Okay, thank you. Taking a slightly different tack now, if I was an owner or a trainer, or particularly if I was a new owner, what would you, or even a breeder as well, what would you kind of give me as a take-home message from your findings?
I think ultimately the dosage system, like a dosage profile can be generated for free online. So compared to the speed gene test, which like you pay either €300 or £260 to do. Now for the dosage system, it assumes that all siblings are the same because it's just based upon pedigree, whereas the speed gene test is much more refined to the individual horse. So the first thing you will probably do is go and see what your horse's dosage profile says. If it has a dosage index of greater than 2, it's most likely to be a good sprinter or suitable for short distances. Whereas if it has a much lower dosage index of like 1 or even less than 1, you would assume it is going to be more suited to long distance races. I think the thing is, with most breeders and owners and trainers, they already know the pedigree. So there's a lot of assumptions around, okay, this sire gives that type, and you know, a different kind of sire gives a sprint type, and there's quite a lot of just general assumptions that are made about different horses. Whereas I suppose what this shows is that the dosage system essentially gives quite a more numeric value of that assumption, whereas the speed gene test will actually show you that you could make 2 horses that are a CT type, and you could either come out with a sprinter of a CC, a TT horse, which is an endurance, or a CT horse, which is the middle type. So yeah, I could go on all day. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. That's fine. Thank you. I'll stop for a moment and I'll go on to Katie, who's up next. So over to you, Katie.
Thank you. So just following on from that question then, Rebecca, and thank you for a really interesting presentation. Do you think as a trainer, it's actually, if I was a trainer looking at this, what would be, am I going to think I know what you're going to tell me anyway? Or is there something that this test can actually inform me and allow me to do my job better, I suppose?
So yeah, I think going back to what I was saying, the point I was really trying to make was the assumptions that trainers might make based upon a certain pedigree mightn't necessarily be what that horse is best suited to genetically, if that makes sense. So like
do you think a trainer would think I can work that out for myself when I work with this horse, or do you think there's a benefit to knowing that before he actually starts his training program with it?
Yeah, I think there certainly is a benefit to knowing it. For example, if a horse is a CC genotype, their muscle fibers are constituted of a much higher proportion of fast twitch muscle fibers, so they're suited to that like quick reaction anaerobic exercise, and that's why them horses tend to be more muscular looking. So if you have a TT horse on the other end, you could end up having a horse that is much later maturing. And so I suppose you might say the trainers can already see this, but if they've mated, oh my God, where am I going? Sorry, I'm not going blank.
That's right. So in terms of a trainer, it's adding information to his sort of knowledge. I think the challenge with anything like this, it's fascinating information. It's the commercial application, isn't it? It's overcoming a trainer thinking, well, I kind of figured that out for myself when I train the horse. And it's whether it can actually sort of shortcut that process. I mean, they're obviously looking for a quicker way to getting the horse to the racetrack, which it seemed to be the case with those test results.
Yeah, I guess it depends how open the trainer is to genetic methods, or how much they will just rely on what they feel they know.
Yes.
I feel like there's a lot of that in the horse industry of just, I have X amount of years experience, what else can this tell me that I don't already know?
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like it has been proven that there is actually a lot it can tell you, especially if you have a horse that is bred from a middle distance family. That horse could actually end up being a CC type, even if it's bred with, like, if it so happens to be a CT stallion and a CT mare, you could actually get a sprint type horse based on the genetic test, or you could get a long distance horse. So I suppose in terms of knowing that, it would eliminate the possibility of the trainer training the horse for the wrong distance, if that makes sense.
Lovely, well done, thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Over to Liz next, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Rebecca. Really enjoyed that. And your presentation really made what's quite a complicated subject clearer. I can appreciate the commercial value of assessing horses as the way you've shown, but can your work be projected forward? So when you're choosing horses for racehorses for breeding, could this system be applied to choosing the ones for breeding and almost sort of guess what you're going to get, or guesstimate what you're going to get?
Yeah, so definitely. So the difference is with the speed gene test, if you look, there's a Punnett square which will show if you mate a CC horse and a CT horse, what you would get, TT, CC, there's 9 different possibilities basically. Not 3 possibilities, but 9 possible combinations. So from that, you won't actually be able to tell until your horse is born what genotype it has, unless you already know that the sire and dam are the homozygous type, so they're either both CC or they're both TT.
Yeah.
Otherwise, there's quite a lot, it could go anyway. In terms of the dosage system, that definitely gives you a definitive value. If you can look up, what's the word? Hypothetical mating online, and from that it will give you a certain value. So it doesn't allow for the recombination of genes during meiosis. So it kind of gives you more of a, okay, horses from these 2 will be this type of horse, and that's it. Instead of allowing for the variation that can come between the mating of 2 horses, basically. They're not all siblings are the same, essentially.
Yeah, thank you. That's great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Liz. And over to Karen, please.
I'm just going to stand back, and because I get terribly confused about the whole nature versus nurture with racehorses when I just look at the breeding and I look at the horses I see at the racecourse. But do you think this has got any role with racehorse welfare going forward and avoiding wastage of horses?
Yeah, 100%. I think there's definitely an issue surrounding racehorse wastage, and perhaps if horses were bred more carefully for the desired type, then there would be less of a case of wastage. I think it's certainly an issue. Like perhaps if you knew the genotype and you knew you were going to breed a CC horse, then that's better than not knowing and assuming you're going to get an outcome when that mightn't actually, the odds mightn't be in your favor as much as you think they are. There is a study out there that was done on a yard of horses that once he implemented the speed gene test, he did get more of his desired outcome, which were the precocious early maturing types. Other than that, yeah, I think it's definitely something I would like to look into, is like, what are the welfare implications of racing a horse at an unsuitable distance?
Exactly.
And how does one determine what an unsuitable distance is? Like, because for example, the CT genotype, depending what way you train that horse, because of the mix of their muscle fibers, if you train it for sprint training, it will actually develop a higher proportion of fast twitch muscle fibers. Then muscle fibers will become more dominant in the horse. It's not that the numbers will change, but they'll become stronger than, say, their slow twitch muscle fibers because of the way you trained it, and vice versa.
So really, there's great applications for this work. So well done. Thank you very much. It's
Thank
really
you.
good.
Thank you, Rebecca. Well done with your questions, and yeah, well done on getting your presentation from your dissertation down really well into the period of time. So good work. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll hand back to you, Claire.